Hey, this is Natalie Grant.
Hi, this is Darlene Chick.
Hey, this is Alan Hall from Sailor.
Hello, my name is Jerome from the band Switchfoot, and you are listening to Life-Changing Radio.
WSDK.
WSDK.
1550 AM.
1550.
Joining us on the Rise and Shine hotline right now, it's our good friend Peter Wolfgang, Executive Director of Family Institute of Connecticut. Good morning, Peter.
Al, good morning. Good to be back with you.
And you as well, sir. So things are heating up a little bit at the state capitol, the assisted suicide bill, and even in Washington, D.C., you had some folks that you know who went down there for the March on Marriage. So take a pick and pick a card, any card.
Well, I'll tell you, Al, I mean, this is the sort of week where I'm really grateful that the Family Institute of Connecticut is not just me, it's all our members.
Right.
Because I was needed here in Hartford this week for the assisted suicide battle. It is heating up. I do ask WSDK listeners to go to the Family Institute's website, go to ctfamily.org, and click on the Take Action button, because the assisted suicide bill got a hearing in the Public Health Committee last week, and now the committee has until April 5th to either vote that bill out of committee, which is the next step towards making it a law, or letting it die in committee, which would be a significant blow to the legalization of assisted suicide in Connecticut. We had a great public hearing last week. I think it was probably the best public hearing day that the Family Institute of Connecticut Action has ever had.
Excellent. Up
at the state capitol. Yeah, It was. I mean, it was just a fantastic press conference with the disability rights activists,
right,
with the medical community,
right,
even, and this is a first for Family Institute, we even have an agency, an arm of the state government that's on our side.
Good.
There was the executive director of the Office for Protection and Advocacy for People with Disabilities, Jim
Good.
McCahey, spoke against this bill. So, I mean, there's really a very strong, there's a concern about elder abuse, too.
Yeah.
Both people with disabilities and elder abuse, a united front against this assisted suicide bill. So where things stand now is that there was an Associated Press article yesterday afternoon that said that Governor Malloy himself is undecided about this bill,
right,
and that the Public Health Committee, before their April 5th deadline, they were really taken aback. I mean, they clearly were not familiar with their own bill. They didn't realize how bad it was. They didn't realize that the way this bill is written, a person could commit suicide on the say-so of a single doctor, could walk out with the drugs that day and take his own life with no waiting period. I mean, the bill is much worse than anything we've seen out of even Oregon or Washington.
Right.
So unfortunately, what they're trying to do now is amend the bill to just tweak it a little bit along those lines. But at the end of the day, Al, it will still be an assisted suicide bill.
Right.
It will still be a bill. And, you know, we need people to understand, we're not talking about letting nature take its course, about keeping a patient alive by extraordinary means against that patient's will. No one supports that. What we're talking about here is the act of taking of human life, of actually trying to kill someone. And, you know, that was the amazing thing, too, with the public hearing. All the people on our side were people who wanted to live. You heard from people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs, who said, I'm concerned I'll be targeted. I want to live. What you heard from the other side was not people who were terminal, but what you heard were people who wanted to take other people's lives. It was really very frightening.
Right. And it's a kind of issue, too, that it really devalues the creation and the creator. And I think that's a dangerous place to go.
Absolutely. And, you know, here in Connecticut, coming off of that horrible thing that happened in Newtown,
Sure.
haven't we had enough devaluing of human life in the state of Connecticut?
Right. So
there's that. There's the assisted suicide. And I had to stay here in Hartford and man the front lines regarding that fight. And we do need people to contact the Public Health Committee and tell them to vote no on HB 6645. And all the details are at ctfamily.org. But now, Al, at the same time that was happening in Hartford, we had something very important happening in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Supreme Court, both yesterday and today, are hearing arguments on two cases that could lead to a Supreme Court decision that imposes same-sex marriage on the entire country and takes away the right of we the people to vote on it. And those are decisions having to do with Proposition 8, which is the law passed by millions of California voters, twice now actually. Twice California passed a law protecting marriage as the union of one man and one woman, and also the Federal Defense of Marriage Act, which in federal law defines marriage as between a man and a woman and prevents one state that has same-sex marriage from imposing it on the other 41 states that do not have it.
Good.
So those arguments were heard yesterday in the Supreme Court, and, happening at the same time as those arguments, there was a March for Marriage, which was organized by our friends on the national level, the National Organization for Marriage, and I'm happy to report that the Family Institute of Connecticut, which has a long history with this fight here in Connecticut, and we should talk about the history of same-sex marriage in Connecticut as well, but the Family Institute was happy to send people down. Some went on their own, some went in a bus that was chartered that went down to Washington, D.C., but there were many Connecticut residents, many Family Institute members at the March for Marriage, and I have reports back from them. What they tell me is that it was a very successful march. There were about 10,000 people. It was much larger than the size of the opposition, and it was a very positive march. The message coming out of the march was not just even so much about marriage as about children and the importance of marriage to children. This is the message that the public needs to understand, Al, is that marriage is not about the wants of the adults. It's about the needs of the children.
Right.
And this is the message that we've been putting out all along, because it's the truth about marriage. Marriage is the institution that connects children to their two parents, a mother and a father, that helped bring them into this world. It's the only institution that does that. Children need their mom and their dad. And, the last thing we need is another radical social experiment being performed on the children and the families of America. So that was the message of the March for Life. And the feedback I got from the Connecticut residents, the Family Institute members that were down there, is that it was very positive. Some of the things that they said in particular, they were very impressed by Reverend Bill Owens, who is the president of the Coalition for African American Pastors, and he spoke vehemently. He was offended. He spoke vehemently against this false claim that same-sex marriage is in the tradition of the civil rights movement. As an African American himself, he knows what true discrimination is.
Sure.
And it was very offensive to him that the redefinition of marriage would somehow be put under that umbrella. So that I think had a big impact on the crowd. The misuse of good terms like equality being used by the opposition, that was something that the crowd noticed, that the other side will not let go of these false arguments. In fact, also that there was a lot of hatefulness, a lot of bitterness from the pro-gay marriage supporters. This is something we've seen over and over again. They talk a lot about love and tolerance, but when you're face-to-face with them, in protests and counter-protests, they demonstrate none of those attributes. So that's, not so much by way of criticism, but let's add that to our list of prayers. We really have to pray for the other side, and hope they find that peace that seems to elude them. You see that especially when we have these sorts of clashes.
Well, I encourage folks to check out the ctfamily.org website to continue praying for Peter and his members, and to join yourself. I think it's a wonderful thing. I've already written my local representatives about the assisted suicide bill myself on that health committee, and make sure that they know that there are hardworking, tax-paying residents who don't want that to go through to the state capitol. So, Peter, thank you again for being on the front lines on these very important issues to every family listening, and Godspeed as you continue to do that work this week, and keep us posted on how all that goes this week.
Thank you, Alan. God bless you and WSDK.
Thanks, Peter.
With quality Christian programming 24 hours a day, we're Life-Changing Radio, 1550 AM. WSDK Bloomfield, Hartford.